Greetings. Today's focus is on the European deliveries of Model 3, as well as the strange relationship between Germany and Tesla, and the fact that this relationship actually could severely damage, if not bankrupt, some of the major corporations that are car companies in Germany. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is the first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything. Also wanted to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Your support definitely makes a huge difference in terms of viability of our channel and our ability to improve quality of execution in many areas. Today's talk is kind of different than we had expected because we're looking forward to our next show involving trucking in particular. What basically happened is that this week it was announced that Tesla had missed the production number goals and sales that they had in mind, not by many cars, but the inference was that the news was good but not terrific. So what we were wanting to focus on then is, what does the future look like, and how does that future impact the stock price of Tesla? So where we're going with this is the fact that it was also announced this week because some folks figured out sequentially how many vehicles had been sold in Greater Europe for the original folks that were ordering, and that number turned out to be just under 14,000 vehicles ordered. Now, when I first saw that number, I was like in somewhat shock because the population of Europe and the value proposition that we're seeing for the Model 3 in Europe is far greater than what we were expecting to happen in the United States. So when I saw 14,000, among, I want to call it pre-orders, these are folks who put down their $1,000 deposit, but it's also Model S or X owners who've decided to purchase the Model 3, and that initial group being only 14,000 in my mind looked like a disaster. It looked like a disaster for several reasons. Number one is that Tesla is planning on 3,000 vehicles per week going to Europe. Number two, if you only have 14,000 vehicles, if you're pushing out 3,000 a week, call it 12,000 a month, you basically run through that demand in basically a month and a half, 2 months. And then what do you do with all the other cars that are being produced? So hence my initial concern when I saw the numbers. We then dug further into the details to find out that the numbers that were being presented focused exclusively on demand for the dual motor and performance edition of the Model 3. So I think that it's terrific that the Model 3 was has gotten that many orders for the high end. Our estimates of those numbers are approximately 150,000 vehicles or Model 3s were sold in the US and Canada. Of those, we're expecting probably half were at the lower end of the price range, closer to $50,000, and maybe a third to a half of them rolled into the dual motor as well as the performance edition of the car. So I think this allayed some of my concerns about it, because I think what then happens as these vehicles start to be delivered, Tesla can now open up to those who are waiting on, instead of a $70,000 to $80,000 US vehicle, we're now targeting cars between $4,500 and 55,000 US. There's going to be a markup for shipping and possibly taxes in Europe. And so I think the news, initially I thought the news was horrible, but in my mind the news is slightly better than I expected in terms of it could have been a disaster. And we're forecasting that once Tesla gets into that 50,000 vehicle the amount of demand obviously increases, probably double what you're seeing for dual motor and performance. And then once we get down to the 35,000 vintage Model 3, we could expect, the numbers to perhaps double or triple again, hence reaching the target numbers we talked about of the European demand being in the range of 100, European and let's say Asia demand being the 150,000 range that we were anticipating. So sort of this is the initial blush of numbers that we're seeing, and I think the start in Europe is good. Not as good as it could be. Obviously, you'd love to sell out at the higher price. Another variable at the higher price is Tesla has to pretty much stack as much cash as possible right now in anticipation of large bond payments due. If they don't get over 360 on the stock price for 22 days prior to March 1st, they have a $920 million bond payment that's due. So the more cash that's on hand from the higher priced vehicles, the better it is for the company. The next thing that we wanted to cover is, sort of the sketch of the numbers was as expected. The highest ordering at about 8,000 vehicles was actually from Norway. As we've discussed numerous times, Norway has a unique situation where between parking fees, tolls, and low taxes to incentivize purchase, Norway is the highest density, number one sort of destination for Teslas on a per capita in the world, and that turns out to be the case in this case as well. Among the orders that were revealed, it was also revealed that 2,000 of these vehicles are going to Germany, and this was an interesting number. I mean, clearly there's enough money in Germany to afford those vehicles. There's sort of a interesting dialogue going on between Tesla and Germany, and sort of the rest of the vehicles were kind of spread throughout Europe, the other European countries, and so probably the most significant in my mind were the top two. We'll post those numbers just so you can see, what was revealed on the distribution of ownership or those that are buying the first two types of vehicles. Now on to the German discussion, which I think is strange, amazing, interesting in terms of what's going on right now. So basically, there's an interesting phenomenon going where everything from Angela Merkel to other German politicians are focused on reducing sort of the German carbon footprint, and using electric vehicle to do so is a key component of the goals of the German government. There have been all kinds of discussions from members of the German government regarding why it is that German majors can't compete with Tesla, and so we're still sort of in that dialogue, and we're adding new elements to that dialogue on a daily basis. So the latest addition to this that we read about was the fact that Germany has introduced a new law where they're actually raising the taxes on diesel trucks and eliminating taxes on electric trucks. So it's great that they're doing this, but the problem is that none of the major German makes have any viable delivery or trucks that they can put on the road right now. So the goal from the government side is to incentivize as much as $5,000 per vehicle the move to electric, but it's kind of weird because in Canada they're doing $75,000 a vehicle as an incentive in Ontario, Canada, and $5,000 is nice, but there's no German solution in the trucking space right now in Class 8 or Class 7 trucks that's really working. Daimler's attempt, as we've covered, kind of didn't work out very well. The next thing we cover in the German relationship with Tesla is, at least at Grohmann Engineering and with suppliers from Germany, directly and indirectly, Tesla is employing about 5,000 people in Germany, especially as the Model 3 grows, and when you consider suppliers to the Model X and S as well. So Tesla has a heavy footprint in Germany, and the use of sort of German suppliers for producing vehicles. The next issue with Germany is that many of the unions in Germany are very concerned about the transition to electric and how this hits the employment of those individuals. So this is another sort of what's going on, issue that's lurking. The next issue that pops up with Germany is the fact that as we look at the vehicles being presented by Audi, BMW, as well as Daimler, these companies are dominant players in the European auto market, particularly VW, I believe, is #1 in the world still, but they haven't had much success delivering electric solutions that consumers are excited about. And in particular, what seems to be the holdup is a 300-mile range vehicle is really the target of most customers. And there's nothing even being offered in the new vehicles by VW, Audi, or Daimler or BMW that approaches that 300-mile range that's necessary, combined with supercharger ability that allows the vehicle to be able to move freely around long distances without any issues. So the final note on the German sort of what's going on list is the fact that, as we've covered previously, Germany has incentives for the move to electric vehicles, and it's kind of strange because they deliberately wrote the rules to try to provide subsidies to electric vehicles but eliminate Tesla, and by having a fairly limited price range of vehicles that would be covered. The process of eliminating Tesla included lowering the price point to $60,000 effectively, and what Tesla did is started delivering vehicles with that price point to get the subsidies for buyers, and then loading on the remainder of the regular items for the car as additives afterwards as a way to circumvent this. And obviously the Germans weren't too thrilled about that, and we'll see how this all works out going forward. But the Model 3 will eliminate sort of these issues, particularly as we deliver the 50,000 equivalent US vehicle as well as the 45,000 equivalent US vehicle to the European market. So the bottom line is that it's clear that Germany is focused on carbon footprint. They've had several incidents where the amount of wind power delivered to the grid has generated so much electricity that they've actually had to ship to other countries, etc. So it's impressive to see the German effort to embrace sort of the change and difference that Tesla represents going forward. As we've covered aggressively, the big three in Germany are having difficulties. And the final sort of piece of footage I wanted to include is something called the EScooter. Germany's Deutsche Post has started producing what is about 5,000 vehicles a year, which are about 50-kilometer range delivery postal vehicles called the EScooter. They've subsequently supplementing this with a Ford-produced larger scooter, which is kind of a Ford pickup truck that's an electric vehicle. And Daimler has been acquiring copies of both the Ford and Deutsche Post produced vehicles to sort of take apart and study, because VW, Daimler, and BMW have been slow to deliver vehicles for Deutsche Post, and they're now starting to produce their own electric vehicles for themselves, as well as starting to ship them, to other customers. The vehicles aren't a significant threat to anyone because 50 miles, or approximately 50 miles, it's 50 kilometers of range, is not that large, but it's amazing to see the battle between the German majors and the government and Deutsche Post. And one comment shared by the VW CEO is why it was that Deutsche Post did not wait for VW to deliver that vehicle before starting to manufacture it themselves. And the answer is that the delays that were being shown by the big German makes on a consistent basis were too long, too overwhelming, and Deutsche Post decided to go for it on its own. And then another weird question, we'll close a photo of this, is how is it that Ford is now delivering a 150-kilometer range pickup truck, and they don't have a similar vehicle available in the United States to be purchased? I think the answer could be that there's an agreement with the unions in the United States to not deliver this vehicle in a U.S. setting, but I'm kind of shocked that for a product that a lot of people are waiting to see show up, why it is that Ford has chosen to deliver in Europe to Deutsche Post, but will not deliver in the United States to customers or buyers that are interested in that product at a Warp 9 level. By the way, it also notes that a lot of people have talked about the Rivia truck and other products that are available, and the reality is that there's actually, the Rivia is a nice product, but it really shows the readiness of the major truck makes, particularly Ford, to sort of respond to any and all threats when it comes to sort of infringing on their dominance in the electric vehicles, particularly electric truck space. So I'm going to, prior to doing this, we'll at least putting the show out, and we'll respond in notes. If you're at Ford or know anyone at Ford, it'd be great to find out why it is they won't allow U.S. customers to purchase the electric vehicles that are being delivered in Germany to Deutsche Post currently. Don't have the answer, but I think it'll be an interesting one once we get the answer to that question. At any rate, I think that stay tuned. I think our conversation about Germany, etc., will be fascinating. Frankly, I don't understand why the German government is pushing so hard on trucks. I want to say there might be a little bit of Tesla envy in terms of the possibility of these trucks being able to improve the overall air conditions within Germany, and hence why there's a push to get to it. Seeing the movement of the Tesla Semi is appealing, but the other problem is that the Tesla Semi doesn't qualify for Europe because it doesn't have the cab over configuration that's a European requirement at this point. Hence, a further question mark as to why it is that Germany has this appeal to, or interest in the Tesla products, but it can't be delivered currently by German manufacturers. The German government is still pushing for it by these tax incentives, and by raising tariffs on your trucks, you're only costing those companies more money in the short term, even though they are making efforts to deliver German solutions in the trucking space that are electric, but it's currently not working out for a number of reasons that we've covered in our last show. So how this plays out will be very interesting to watch. This is the formal ending of what we usually do in terms of our discussion of Tesla, electric vehicles, and Germany in this case. I like to introduce a health portion of our show, and for our health portion today, I had an encounter with a kidney doctor this week, and I'm currently learning about something called free radicals. So what he explained was that you should eat fried foods no more than once a week, and he also highlighted the amount of stomach cancer that's experienced by Japanese folks based on eating cured foods. So there are a lot of ways in which food can be handled that negatively affects people's bodies and results in kidney issues, hence his specialty. I wanted to encourage all of you to read up on something called free radicals, because depending on the nature of how the food is handled, free radicals are created that end up affecting your short and long-term health. And the cured foods, along with things like fried foods, is part of those issues that are popping up. I am not an expert in chemistry. An extra oxygen element is added to the molecule, which creates issues. Things like antioxidants can help in terms of eating fruits and vegetables, etc., to diminish the negative impact of free radicals on your body. I think the whole discussion is fascinating and worth all of us taking some time to learn about. So the concept for today I wanted to encourage us to learn about is free radicals and how food is impacted by this. And then the last note I want to make on this is we had a discussion about the fact that when you cook food in oil, it tastes great, but for example, fried chicken is no longer fried chicken. It's another substance that it's been converted to, and the oil has been converted by the high heat as well. So we're in essence ingesting these foreign objects that are introducing free radicals and affecting our health short and long term. So for those of you who are interested in the health zone that we tend to cover, I wanted to encourage you to read up on free radicals and the impact of frying on foods in terms of turning them into an unhealthy zone. The final piece that we had a conversation about was what's happening with high fructose corn syrup and its impact on the body. And what he pointed out is what people don't realize is by ingesting high fructose corn syrup, you may not see the fat addition in terms of elements of fat added to the body, but you will encounter some interesting problems when it comes to fat. The body doesn't know what to do with certain foreign substances, so it stores those substances as fat around organs of the body. So folks can generate type 2 diabetes by the encounter with these foreign substances stored as fat internal to the body that are not obvious. So interesting conversation. Look forward to any comments any of you may have on this. As usual, thanks for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe. Our Patreon support would be greatly appreciated. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, lehitraot, choda hafez. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us. Bye for now.